So the birth of the Ambitions Agency. Now this is quite a story, so bear with. I'll try and give it a timeline and keep it simple, but I think it's important to explain where this wonderful business has come from. So in the late 1980s, I believe, I hope I've got that right, a couple in South Devon called Chris and Gilly, with a design background themselves, started a business called Logo Design. And while they were doing that in the 1980s, I was at school in North London, a Highgate school in North London. And then after that, I went to university in Sussex, University of Sussex, down at Brighton, and studied economics with French. Eventually leaving 1989, I left university. So Logo Design Limited is growing away, obviously quite happily in that time. I've left university. After a few false starts, frankly, I decided that I really wanted to work in advertising agencies, and I worked as an account manager at some names that some of you will recognise as Lintas and Still Price and Bran, which is, I think, still doing very well. And then after a few years in account man, I thought, actually, I want to be a creative within these agencies. So I went off and retrained at Watford College. Logo Design still growing away down in Devon. I became a copywriter and joined, again, did an alarming to my parents, number of free internships for various agencies over about a year and a half, before landing my first job as a copywriter at Saatchi & Saatchi. So they were pleased because that was a name they'd heard of, and I was pleased because I could actually afford to eat, which was lovely. My career as a writer was enjoyable. If you don't know, a copywriter sits in a room with an art director and is tasked, they as a team are tasked with coming up with ideas for commercials. It might be TV, radio, press, whatever. So we worked in our first, at Saatchi's there, the big clients was Carlsberg. We did a lot of T-Mobile as it was back in the day, a lot of Toyota, and aerial ads. We did, dare I say, some ads with the lovely Tim Henman, going around the world, filming him, getting his clothes white. So all good fun and all good stuff. And again, while this was going on, Logo Design was still growing down here in Devon. Now, towards the latter part of my career in London, I had actually moved my family down to Devon, and I really was looking for a way to have a marketing career and live somewhere nice. And it didn't appear to be that easy or obvious at first, certainly in terms of getting a job. It's like, well, you know, if you write TV ads, then maybe not so many jobs down here. Long story short, I was offered a job. I was offered a job as a marketing director down in Devon, so I took that. That was a management buyout. Was just about to happen on quite a big firm, baby wear firm down here, called Growbag. If you've got a baby on one of those little sleep bags, that was a I think at the time about a £5 million business. It ended up being about £20 million, I think, by the time we'd finished, and it got sold on again to Tommy Tippy. So I'm now in Devon working in marketing, but that was never really what I wanted to do. Interesting as it was to be on the client side, because it gave me an idea of what agency I'd like. Logo Design is still growing, but the lovely people who'd started Logo Design were now at the point where they actually wanted to retire. Come the end of 2015, it came up for sale, and after, as you can imagine, a lot of meetings and chats and talking to my bank and my wife and extending the mortgage, I bought the company. So begin of 2016, I take ownership of a company called Logo Design Limited. And here we are, obviously 6 years later, and we've become the Ambitions Agency. Well, the reasons for that, I guess we'll go into in other videos, but suffice it to say, the real thrust of the birth of the Ambitions Agency was after a few years in Logo Design Limited. And Logo Design Limited was a great design thing. It didn't just do logos, because that's not a big business. It did websites. Did websites in a certain way. It just designed beautiful websites, and off people went. And it really became obvious. Two things became obvious. The first one was that just building a website for companies wasn't really going to make a big enough difference to them. And secondly, it became obvious that we really wanted to work with bigger companies, more ambitious people. And we'd used the strap line, the Ambitions Agency on Logo Design. And you know what? come 2019, we said, let's actually just change everything. Let's get rid of the old guard completely. We're just going to become the Ambitions Agency because that's our brand, that's what we do. And so the Ambitions Agency was born and registered as a new company to give us a clean slate, and off we went from there. So that is how the Ambitions Agency was created.